Entrepreneurship and Innovation. This is session 11, the diffusion of innovation. In this part, we're going to introduce how innovation diffuses and one of the classic models for the diffusion of innovation. The point here is that there is a repeatable pattern to how innovation diffuses, and you'll see it from almost every innovation. Historically, you'll see this pattern, and once we understand the pattern and what's driving it, the various phases of the model, then we can use it to improve the diffusion effectiveness. If we ourselves are the diffuser, where we're pushing an innovation, we can find the key turning points so that our product, our innovation, moves on in the market and is acceptable. On the other hand, we could also be the consumers of innovation, and by watching how innovation diffuses, we can wisely adopt innovation at the right time for the right purpose. So we'll use this platform to show you both how you, as a technology or an innovator, can get your innovation launched into the marketplace and for it to find traction and to find its market, and also as a technology consumer, which all of us are in one way or another, you can make judicious choices by watching as a technology, when it first comes out onto the marketplace as an innovation, diffuses, and when is it appropriate for us to adopt at what level. Take, for example, a number of technologies here. Some are straightforward electric technology, some are electronic technology, but they all pretty much, when you look at it, follow a very definite pattern here. You know, they take for example, let's see a color TV. Let's look at color TV. They have a very definite startup, and then they have a steep climb, and then it saturates. This is, of course, percent of households in the U.S. that have a color TV, for example, or a computer, or an air conditioning, or a dishwasher, so on. So some of the technologies, you know, almost all of them follow this very, very definite pattern that we will talk about and study. Refrigerators, air conditioners, the rise of the internet, which hasn't still penetrated all 100% of all U.S. households. Cell phone, it's getting up there into the saturation stage. Now, there are some definite changes in some of these, and you can understand why. For example, the telephone. The telephone went through a period where its growth, it should have gone straight up into the saturation in that very unique curve, but it didn't. It kind of slowed down, mostly for a number of reasons. In this period of time in the United States, as there was worldwide, there was a depression. Fewer people could afford telephone. Plus, same thing with electricity. There was a little bump here. Part of it is exactly because of the economic conditions in the country, but some of it is because it was easier, shorter distances, to wire up a city, for example, for electricity or for telephone. But when it got to wiring up the rest of the country, which was very rural, and at that time we had more than 50% of the country living in rural areas, it took a lot more cable and wires to get out to every single household, so things kind of slowed down some. Same thing here in automobiles. A little different with automobiles is that people couldn't afford automobiles. At a certain point, the manufacturing of automobiles slowed down because there wasn't a market for it, because people didn't have money to buy them. So there were a few clothes dryers, same kind of thing, clothes dryers, clothes washers. But by the time we got into the more good economic times, late 50s and 60s, things got back to the normal diffusion curves. You know, that's what we talk, penetration curves, which we might discuss as diffusion. How these commodities, or not commodities at the beginning, they were innovations. The microwave was an innovation. Eventually, today, it's considered a commodity, but at that time, it was very much of an innovation. And it took this very unique pattern. And the thing to notice here is the unique pattern. That's the point of this slide. It has that pattern. Repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly. The guy who observed this and gave us the model, the classic model of diffusion, which has since been embellished and modified and changed somewhat. But the foundational model, which still holds true, is this gentleman, Everett Rogers. He was a psychologist and he sociologist, and he noticed it as a social event. People adopt because they hear from other people. They get educated by word of mouth. The social network, the social fabric, is really what promotes the diffusion of innovation. That's what's the unique thing that Everett Rogers focused on and helped us understand. And his work is very foundational, the diffusion of innovation. You should get a copy and read it because I think it has a lot of good information in it. In the next section, we're actually going to investigate all the elements that Roger helped us understand and how innovation diffuses.